Good evening, and on behalf of the BBC, we'd just like to reassure viewers, given the recent increase in the licence fee, that every penny of your money has been well spent. And our thanks to the entire population of Kettering for subsidising that one. In the news this week, in Hyde Park, the mysterious disappearance of Peter Sissons is explained. In Sunderland, there's a positive reaction to the news that tax on alcohol and tobacco has not risen as much as expected. And in Eastbourne, Britain's oldest sneak thief relieves another hapless punter of his watch. On Ian Hislop's team, a man who recently said, "Every TV show I've been on captures that feeling of having a laugh with your mates," which may explain why David Dimbleby tends to get the state funerals. Phil Jupitus. And with Paul Merton tonight is the BBC's economics editor, who, according to Jeremy Paxman, is brave enough to tell people from the Chancellor down when they're talking bollocks. But sadly not brave enough to do the same thing to Jeremy Paxman. Evan Davies. Round one has all the hallmarks of an opening round, featuring, as it does, our first question, which is this. Paul and Evan.
Oh, I can get this one, actually. This is the budget. And there's Peter Snow making a big appearance on the BBC's budget programme. And there's a very eminent commentator. And there I am in a spaceship, having been abducted by aliens. And this, obviously, is the budget, which occurred this week. Oh, this is surprisingly easy, actually, isn't it? No, this is the budget in which Gordon Brown unlocked secrets that were obviously entirely, he could never have known just 10 months ago during the election campaign. He could not possibly have told us that taxes were going up, and he made some very difficult decisions, such as he's not going to put up income tax, but he's going to put up a tax on income and put the money to the health service.
Right, yes, the health service are the people who seem to be winning out on this.
Definitely the big gainers.
And bingo players are the other ones, isn't it?
He didn't actually do it on bingo. He said he was going to consult on bingo, which gives him a chance to announce it again when he actually does it. So he'll be headline after headline.
It builds up the suspense for all
builds up,
rather like a game of bingo.
You sound very cynical about this. Are you suggesting that he could have told us he was going to put up taxes during the election?
I think that's a very good question, Ian. In fact, chancellors don't want to draw up a budget before they have to.
No.
So no, it would have been quite impossible to know that the NHS was going to need all this money just 10 months later.
It also seemed a bit unfair on the Lib Dems. I don't want to sound particularly like a Lib Dem, but
no, go on. It's one of your best impressions.
All right. They said about 5 years ago, why don't we put 1p on income tax? And the Labour Party said, what a pathetic idea. And now they put 1p on national insurance. And it's not pathetic anymore. No. It's brilliant.
It's the sheer banality of it. Every year they're standing there holding up a box. I mean, why don't they do something different? I don't know, come out on horseback or something. Surely we know what a bloke holding up a case looks like. Every year, year in and year out, then he starts this bloody speech that goes on forever. What you should do is take a hallucinogenic drug just before he kicks off. And at home we can spot when it's kicked in. He said, well, he's putting money in the health service. That could be normal. Then sort of I don't know, cable knit sweaters for antelopes are half price.
Well, there were various bets that you could take on his speech, weren't there?
That's right.
Yeah.
How long it was?
Length of speech is the obvious one.
Yeah, whether he was going to speak in a high-pitched voice.
Which he never does.
Never does.
That's why
it's 100 to 1.
Number of times he mentions...
I lost 100 quid on that. I really thought he was going to do it this year.
So it's been a big time of the year for you. You're always busy this time of year, I guess.
Well, not particularly. I mean,
Were you flattered by the Mirror's description of you?
It was actually Radio Times, I think, originally.
Right.
It was Sue Summers, wasn't it?
It was Sue Summers, yeah, who said some very, nasty things about how ugly we were.
They weren't pleasant
me
things,
and other people,
right?
yeah. I would say
they were one of the strangest-looking males on the planet, is what they said.
Indeed, It's not the most flattering photograph. It actually looks like I have been abducted by aliens in that particular photo.
I can think of 3 odder-looking men.
What does it come on me for? What does it come on me for then?
Yes, this is the...
Oh, lovely.
Angus, I've not done this quiz before. Is it all maths?
Well, we have the economics editor, you see, who
All right.
presumably got the job because he's very good at sums, is that?
Add that and he's
Presumably.
gorgeous.
My mental arithmetic is actually not what it used to be. I just have a calculator these days, to be quite blunt.
Shock, horror. Economics editor has calculated.
4 nines!
Yes.
Not playing
Too
that
late,
game.
too late.
Yes, it is the latest budget statement from Gordon Brown, who's promised to spend an extra £1 billion to ensure
36. 4 9 to 36.
Gordon Brown has promised to spend an extra £1 billion to ensure that British patients get the best hospital treatment in Europe. Sounds a lot, but that's what it costs to send them all to France. It's been widely perceived as another solid performance by Gordon Brown, who still hopes to add his name to the list of chancellors down the years who've made a successful transition to Prime Minister. Jim Callaghan and John Major, to name none. Ian and Phil, your government health warning.
Aerial photo of Barbados.
Vaccination, it's good for you. This is a sleaze story. The government had a contract for smallpox vaccine because Saddam Hussein, who we saw at the end there, just firing a rifle into a crowd of his relatives. Sort of Russian roulette game he plays. He's got vast amounts of smallpox which he's going to unleash on us. And Tony Blair rightly thought we must get a lot of vaccine in to stop us all getting smallpox. And he went through the normal procedure, which is not putting it out to someone who's donated money to the Labour Party.
Yeah, he gave 50 grand to the Labour Party a few months ago, and the contract that he's been given is worth 32 million. So I work out, if I gave him £1,
Then
I'd get £620, which is better than most high-yield building societies. I'm not in economics, Evan, but that sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
well, Evan wouldn't have been able to work it out anyway. Cause,
He hasn't got a calculator.
exactly. But don't you prefer back-of-the-envelope calculations? Is this what I read?
Yeah, I don't think there's any point in being sort of excessively precise about calculations.
So, kids, don't bother with maths.
No. Spurious accuracy, accuracy. There's that famous thing that Everest is 28,002 feet high. Who cares about those last 2 feet? It'd be ridiculous, wouldn't it?
Well, if you were climbing it, it makes a difference. No good stopping at 28,000 feet, kidding yourself you've got to the top. And you go home, you look it up in a library, and oh, look, I told you it was another 2 feet, you should stay there.
That's the sort of thinking that gets us the wobbly bridge. How far is it across the river? Was it about that far, isn't it?
So what's been the Department of Health's official excuse about why they've given it to Powderject? That's the name of the company.
Because they were the only company who could do it in the time. And then they got really angry with people who suggested that there was something fishy about it, saying you're cynical and you're destroying trust in the government. Tony said trust him, and if you don't,
Right.
then you're wrong.
But we've made it clear, or at least Blair has made it clear, that he supports Bush on Iraq.
I don't know why Bush doesn't just, like, whenever he needs Blair, actually just go, come by!
Tony's image in the US is slightly strange, certainly if this new Action Man-style doll is anything to go by. Fortunately, the models of Bush and Bin Laden are slightly more realistic. Also available for some extraordinary reason is Bin Laden in a tutu and tights.
The propaganda war's not lost, you know.
Looks like Gary Bushell with a headache.
According to toy company president Emile Vicali, you can now buy Tony Blair for £19. Bernie Ecclestone must be kicking himself. Paul and Evan, to your marks.
This is the London Marathon, quite clearly.
That's me.
That's me. This is the man who's setting the world record for the slowest marathon, isn't he?
And she won the one for the fastest marathon. And he's a long way behind her. I don't even know if he's finished yet, actually, but I mean...
No, he's due to finish today, if you think of today as being Friday, though it's Thursday. It's the slowest marathon. This is a ridiculous record.
Well, you know, it's a record. It's a way of getting into the record books.
And
Yes,
it
yeah.
raises money for charity, too.
Yes.
And who are the various celebrity entrants that they've
Jacques
been?
Cousteau.
He didn't.
He's swimming it.
Gordon Ramsay, Frank Bruno, and the BBC weatherman, Philip Avery, who got disqualified 300 yards from the end because he'd written his own number. So he did the whole 26 miles and then got disqualified.
Bit like climbing Mount Everest, but not getting the final. You see, numbers are important. Numbers are very important.
Do you know him at all? You
I
must
don't know
meet
Philip
in a
Avery,
can-
no. I mean, weather people, it's a different part of the BBC, really. I mean, it's not... No, it's not... I'm not trying to imply... No, I'm not trying to imply...
Got their own drinking fountain, have they, Evan?
No, I mean, I'm in awe of what they do, because really, they...
Really?
Yeah, I mean, they ad-lib, they do it live, they don't... Half the time they can't see what they're looking at, you know, they're
Drunk.
Can if they open the window.
they're pretending, and it's absolutely amazing. And they can do it to time, you see. I can't do that. They can be told...
Sorry, we haven't got time to... this is Lloyd Scott, to give him his name, who completed the London Marathon in the slowest ever time of 6 days, wearing a diving suit. In case he fell, Lloyd was accompanied by soldiers from the Royal Green Jackets, one of whom told the Daily Mail, "We got involved because we thought Lloyd's plan was the maddest thing we'd ever heard, until, that is, they heard Tony Blair had sent all the Marines off to Afghanistan." And finally, Ian and Phil.
Oh, my lord. The foot. The foot. The evil RG. He must be punished. There it is in a flip-flop. And there's Michael Owen swapping Pokemon cards with Sven Göran Eriksson. I've got this one. Thanks. It's all about the foot, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thingy's broke his foot.
Who's Thingy?
The Beckham fella.
Right.
Because he got stamped on by an evil RG. In keeping with the way we have revenge against Argentinians, he's to be torpedoed next Thursday. But the funny thing about this is like every pub in the country now has turned into an osteopathy clinic. You know, you've got all these big old blokes going, it's the proximal flanges, you see, it's just about that.
It's because the papers are full of photographs like this, you see, that's why.
I thought that was the Tora Bora Mountains. That's the last 2 foot of Everest, look at it.
How's the Sun come to David's aid?
Oh, God, they wanted everyone to touch the foot. They had a photo of the foot
We can
on
see
the front
the
of the
photo.
Sun, and they wanted everyone to touch it and send good vibes.
I think that foot is in quite good shape, actually.
Yes, it's even better shape, actually, if you look at the Mirror's version of it. Curiously
Has
hairless.
the Mirror given it a waxing?
I think it has, yes.
The only thing I read is that a number of bishops had ordered us to pray for Mr. Beckham's foot. Was it true?
No.
No, good.
But
But that Blair had stopped a cabinet meeting in order to make a statement, and I thought that probably was true.
Yes. He said, nothing's more important to England than David Beckham's foot, he said.
I wish I believed that was a joke.
Yes. And now, gentlemen, the bombing of Iraq. News of Beckham's injury even reached Japan, where the England team will be based in the forthcoming World Cup, and where, according to The Independent, the locals refer to England players such as Davido Bekuhamu and Makero Uwan, whilst Martin Keown is apparently still known as very ugly-looking broke. So, at the end of that round, the scores are like the legs on a GM turkey, 4 each side. And so to the pride of Britain, tabloid journalists and their much-heralded coverage of serious news, as illustrated by such headlines as Paul and Evan. Take her up the aisle, sir.
Well, the Sun has been running a campaign this week for Charles to marry Camilla. But he can't take her up the aisle because he's been married before.
He could have a civil ceremony and then take her up the aisle for a blessing.
Indeed.
So what's the sign that Camilla has finally been accepted into the royal family?
She went to the funeral.
She did. The Queen Mother's funeral. The first state occasion that she was allowed to attend, although she did sit at the back, behind Fergie, which was virtually... Who was visibly pained at the funeral?
Prince Charles was upset, I believe.
Thatcher, actually, I was thinking.
Oh, really?
Yes, because Dennis stood on her foot. So who offended the royal family over the funeral?
The BBC. Peter Sissons wore the wrong colour tie and started pulling faces. None of which were his own. They went, "Bruh."
No, he didn't. He wore the wrong colour tie.
That's what I said,
Yes, yes. Have you chatted to Peter about it?
No, I haven't actually. I have chatted to Peter, but I haven't chatted to him about that, actually.
Right.
No.
Right. Have you deliberately avoided the subject?
No. I mean, it's not great to keep going on about it, but I mean, I think he's been very unlucky, because I don't really think it was
that big a deal?
Well, A, it wasn't a big deal, and B, I don't think it's his decision. I think there were probably committees and committees who were deciding what tie he wore that day. So
The tie committee?
Yeah. Do you think there is probably a head of ties, isn't there? The BBC's announcement of the Queen Mother's death interrupted an edition of Auntie's Bloomers, and 2 hours later, some puzzled viewers were still glued to the waiting for Peter Sissons to fall off his chair. Ian and Phil, Antigeddon.
Argentinian ants are apparently rampaging across southern Europe. They came over in 1920, looking to start a simple life. Ants normally, they fight each other. They're quite an irate beast. But these Argentinian super ants all get on with each other, and so they all get on, and they're taking over all the other ants in the world. Scientists have found some irritable Argentinian ants. This is true. And they're going to introduce the irritable Argentinian ants, and the quote from the scientists was to foment discord within the community.
And what are the name of these ants?
Well, there's a lot of them. OK,
Right.
Steve, Barry, Andrew... You got a while.
And this is what they look like. There we are.
Are they that big? Jesus.
Yes. And why the sudden panic now?
Someone's planning a picnic?
Well, they're panicking now because they're on a march in Europe.
They've got banners.
They've been in Europe
and
for a
it's
while.
baffling scientists because it's the first time so many are working. Wait, it says it there. It's like a terrifying army.
More precisely, they're gradually reaching England. That's
Yeah,
why
that's right.
we're suddenly worried. The Mail warns, with their castes and colonies, bizarre sex lives and their absolute devotion to their rulers, ants seem similar to aliens in our midst.
Well, they'll do anything to get an illegal immigrant story in, won't they?
And even the Independent editorial said, the empire of the ant must not be allowed to prevail.
To destroy them, what we need is, like, a really, really big kettle.
According to the Times, the ants are 0.1 of an inch long, which in layman's terms is roughly the size of an ant. The ants are aggressive, disciplined, surprisingly social, and, as this map of their progress shows, particularly fond of sunbathing. Which, blatant crawling means at the end of this anticlimax, well, neither side seems prepared to exhibit any leadership qualities, both obsessed with remaining on 6. If it's round 3, as the saying goes, it must be the odd one out section of the programme. Not a very well-known saying, admittedly, but nonetheless, Paul and Evan, your men of substance, are Admiral Nelson, Tony Blair, Lord Levy and Peter Beardsley.
What's Tony Blair doing there, for goodness sake?
He's adjusting his earpiece. It's Alistair Campbell coming through.
Or comforting a sick budgie. You'll be all right, I'm the Prime Minister.
Levy is a mate of Blair's, and he's been involved in some consultant gates thing and
Right.
Accused of something. And is the Middle East
Quite a
Middle
vague
East-
It's
answer.
that approximate thing with you, isn't it? Every
It's,
time.
He's the Middle Eastern envoy, Prime Minister's Middle Eastern
He
envoy.
is, yes.
So
That
that's the easy
part
bit.
is correct.
That's going
yes.
well. The
Good.
Middle Eastern peace mission.
Peter Beardsley, is he got off-tax thing?
An offshore tax account, you mean? No.
That's it. No.
No, he hasn't. It's to do with something that Blair was in trouble for a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, is this freebies to Egypt?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Egypt. That's the link. Lord Nelson, who won the Battle of the Nile.
Very good.
Lord Levy, who's the Middle Eastern envoy and goes to Egypt. And this man Beardsley, who I obviously know a huge he played for Egypt.
Beardsley the odd one out because he's nothing to do with Egypt.
They've all been to Egypt.
Yes.
Except Beardsley,
That's what I just said.
who built a pyramid in his garden.
The answer is that they've all had freebie trips to Egypt, except Lord Levy, who pays for his own trips himself.
He does.
And why does he do that?
Well, it would look corrupt otherwise.
Yes, he has no official position, and he's not an MP or a minister, so he's not accountable in any way. What else does he do for Tony?
He's a fundraiser, and he plays tennis with Tony, which I think is quite an important role in government nowadays. And he sets up blind trusts so that businessmen can give money and have no idea when they get the contract awarded to them.
Right. That's what a blind trust is, isn't it?
It is. You've got to be blind to trust it.
So what's his background, Lord Levy?
It's the sort of grey wallpaper with... That's right. And an armchair.
Meaning what he did in his life before...
Oh, he was a record producer, and he discovered Alvin Stardust.
Doing what? With that glove on. Oh, what a horrible image.
You were in the music business, weren't you?
I was a press officer for the House Martin, so I would, you know, mail singles to the Didcot advertiser. Rock.
You're
Yes.
a DJ now, aren't you?
I am indeed. Wiki,
I don't
wiki
like that
wow.
advert
Which, what, for...
where
6
you
minutes?
ruin someone's wedding.
It's actually not me, it's just a big fat bloke, and thank you for...
Tony Blair, why did he get into trouble recently?
Well, he went on holidays to Egypt, and
Yes.
the Egyptians paid for it.
They did. The Egyptian government paid.
Well, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't mean sort of individual Egyptians in the street.
One of Cairo's Chinese restaurants used a photograph of the Blairs in an advertisement after they had dinner there. According to the owner, Tony had chicken and black bean sauce, and Cherie had duck feet and fish lips. Although he didn't say what she ate. Ian and Phil, your slightly curious mix. Stephen Byers, Chris de Burgh, John Burt and Kraftwerk.
It's got to be rail, hasn't it? Because Stephen Byers is in charge of, nominally, the Department of Transport.
Yes.
Yeah.
John Burt, having made such a success of the BBC, is now thinking about rail for Tony.
Kraftwerk did Trans-Europe Express, which is a record about German trains.
So they've all got links with rail, and he's holding up some amusing fruit.
It's rather more precise than that. The answer is that they've all written songs about trains, except for Stephen Byers, who has an appalling record on trains. Rather like Chris de Burgh, in fact.
What? Burt's written a record on trains?
John Burt wrote Now for a Little Train Number for Kenny Everett.
Right, what a talented fellow.
Do you think that somebody said to Stephen Byers, look, the plastic thing makes you look a bit stupid. Put the top of it.
And what old tricks has Stephen been up to recently?
He leaked some news during when it was the Queen Mother's funeral.
Yes. What was the news?
She's dead.
Didn't need to leak that news, really, did he?
No, but he can't help it.
Right. And which sidekicks have left him this year? Stephen?
Joe. Moore.
Martin.
Martin. Is he a mate of yours?
Yeah.
I knew him because he actually was at the DSS, as was. He was the chief guy there. And he was filmed with those bits of bacon when he was walking back in the middle of that whole scandal, which I thought was really weird. Who goes out and just buys bacon on its own? I mean, don't you normally buy...
individual rations?
Well, he just had like a packet of bacon. I mean, don't you normally buy something with your bacon?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what sort of maniac is he? Bacon? If I was working in the supermarket, I'd say, get out of here, you're psychotic. Get out. I wouldn't serve him.
Yeah.
I said, get a bag of crisps or something, not just bacon. Turns my stomach when people do that. Really annoying. There's a bloke going my way, he just goes in and buys some bacon. I say, I know all about you, mate. Solitary bacon buyer, we shout out.
You can see why...
Somebody like that shouldn't be in goal.
No, exactly. You can see why Stephen Byers got rid of him.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How did he find out that he'd been fired? Do you remember this?
He wrote something on a rasher.
He heard he'd resigned on the radio.
So what was Christa Berg's song about a train? I don't know that
Spanish Train.
Spanish Train?
It's about a journey through Spain on a train.
Yeah. Does he rhyme Spain and train?
I don't think he does, actually, no. I think he missed that trick.
Oh.
One article in the Daily Record revealed, during his tour of the Lebanon, Christa Berg hired his own private army to protect him after he became terrified he might be kidnapped. Although it could have made history as the first case where the kidnappers cut off their... Which aimless casting means at the end of the line this week's puny tiddlers are Paul and Evan with 6, while this week's prize specimens are Ian and Phil with 7. But before we bow out, for the brief courtesy that is our caption competition, Ian and Phil have this.
Quick, get an arrow in that bloke walking along with just the bacon.
He's not wearing the right tie, I'll get him.
Why wouldn't they give me an arrow?
Thank you, Paul and Evan. Get this.
I can't think of anything remotely interesting about that. It's Tony Blair just having a stretch.
That would do.
Yeah.
Yep. On which elevated
Well, it won't
note...
do, really, will it?
No.
I mean, I'm showing what's my caption? Tony Blair's having a stretch. No, now, the next ones you'll do will all be funny pictures. Sort of like Jeff Capes with a budgie coming out his ear or something like that. I know you'll do a Jeff Capes budgie coming out his ear. And we get that. We want to see what the next pictures are like, and I bet you they're all better than Tony Blair having a stretch. OK, let's have a look. Go on, off you go.
And I leave you with news that life in Kabul gets back to normal as Afghanistan sees the return of its own topical news quiz.
That is funnier than Tony Blair having a stretch.
Enough.
Bloke on the right saying hello, who's nicked their office?
Bloke on the left's going, why I keep losing?
At JFK Terminal 3, the public are accused of overreacting. A Muslim stopped to tie his shoelace. And the project to type the complete works of Shakespeare is halted after a shop steward leads a walkout. Good night.
We skip back another couple of years and watch Paul Merton's fashion sense plummet next. Charles Kennedy and Jermaine Greer are the Stooges for more of I Got News for You. In just a moment, here on Documentary.